Hello. I made a video which was called Essential Knowledge for a Wall Street Protester, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks ago. And people have found it so informative that I've been inundated with requests to do a little bit more on this. So this, if you like, is part two. And what I'm going to concentrate here on is what I've uncovered over 21 years of research now about how a few people are manipulating the direction of the world and how they do it. And when you say that, people immediately ask an obvious question. How do they do it? It's 7 billion people now we've just passed, apparently. How does a handful of people, a network of families, control so much of the world, like banking, transnational corporations, governments in terms of any major party that has a chance of forming a government, controlling the pharmaceutical cartel, the oil cartel, the biotech cartel, and so on? Well, the first point to make is that this conspiracy, which has become a dirty word, he's a conspiracy theorist, as if conspiracies don't exist. I mean, it's unbelievable. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq wasn't a conspiracy, please. Anyway, the point to make is that this has not been going on for a few years or a few decades, even for a few centuries. I know people find that hard to believe. I haven't done any research or read anything about it, but it's the truth, and it can be supported by the evidence, big time, by very detailed evidence. And thus they have had time to build a global structure, which we have today, that allows the few to control the many in a very simple way once the structure's in position. What they've done is create a secret society and bloodline family version of a transnational corporation. If you take something, for instance, like McDonald's, they'll have a headquarters in America, and in each country they'll have their subsidiaries. And the subsidiaries take their orders and what they do and how they do it from the centrally dictated headquarters. This is why when you walk into a McDonald's, if you feel the need, in Moscow or Sydney or London or Johannesburg or wherever, you're walking into basically, overwhelmingly, the same McDonald's. And this global structure, which allows this, the center of the spider's web, if you like, to dictate into every country, works in the same way. You've got the center of the web, what I call the spider, in Europe. It's in places like the City of London, Rome, Germany, France, Belgium. To a certain extent in America, United States, but nothing like to the extent that you would think, given the apparent dominance of America over the world for so long. In so many ways, the center, the spider in Europe, loads the gun, if you like, and gets America to fire it. And so everyone looks to America, big bad America and all the rest of it. And I'm not saying that the government and establishment in America is not like that. It bloody well is. But the real power is in Europe, not in the European governments, in the center of this secret society bloodline web. So there's the center, there's the headquarters, there's the spider at operational level. Then in every other country, whether it's South Africa or Johannesburg or Canada or anywhere, you have the subsidiary networks answering to the spider, the headquarters in the center. And these networks in the different countries are, again, bloodline families under different names and their agents and gophers, and a secret society network and web that is there to manipulate them and their agents and gophers into the significant positions of power so that they control that country's government and political system, banking, big business, all the rest of it, media at ownership level. And so the national subsidiary web in each country, just like McDonald's, carries out the policies of the spider at the center. Thus, in the last 21 years, I've been to something like 55 or more countries now researching this and talking about it. And I see the same things being introduced using the same excuses in country after country after country at the same time or around the same time. This is the structure that allows that to happen. Then there's another level, which is that the national network subsidiary also has subsidiaries in the towns, the cities, the regions and the communities. And therefore, they can dictate to the next level down and dictate what happens in cities and communities around the country. And in this structure, it means the spider at the center of the web can, through this structure, manipulate down into local communities in country after country after country. So the goal of this web is to change society in every country to create a global fascist communist dictatorship based on a world government that would dictate to every country, a world central bank that would dictate all world finance in every country, a world currency, just electronic, not cash, a single world currency, a world army to impose the will of the world government, and a microchip population, which people absolutely laughed at when I came out with that, well, I don't know, 15 years ago or more, but no, they're not laughing anything like so much now because all these things are starting to happen. So if we bring this down, this structure down, into a country, and let's take the United States. At the moment, and up to this point, people have been led to believe that there are two parties in America that have any chance of forming a government. One's the Republicans and the other one is the Democrats. Actually, as in every other country, they are not different parties. They are masks on the same face. And whenever they get into power, they are carrying out the will of the spider at the center of the web to constantly follow the agenda that network at the center is dictating. So if you look at, for instance, George Bush, boy George Bush, and Barack Obama, on the face of it, if you looked at their election campaigns and what they claim to stand for, you could hardly come across two people who seem to be so different in their attitude to politics and economics and all of it. But actually, as we've seen with Obama, and for all his lies and all his mendacity, he has done us a favor in a sense, because he was so extreme in claiming to be different, in claiming to want to bring about change, that the fact that he's been business as usual and then some has really emphasized, more than ever before perhaps, for large numbers of people, that actually there is no difference. Question is why? How do they pull it off? Simple. If you look at boy George Bush during the period of 9/11, the Iraq invasion, the Afghanistan invasion, etc., he was demonstrably controlled one step back by a group of people that were widely reported, even in the mainstream media, which became known as the neocons or neoconservatives. These are people like Richard Pearl, William Crystal, and Paul Wolfowitz, and all that crowd. And therefore, he had his policies and what he did driven by that network. Over on the Democrat side, now Obama, of course, behind him are a group of people, a kind of Democrat mirror of the Democons, who I call, or the neocons, which I call the Democons. And the Democons are people like Rahm Emanuel, who was the White House chief of staff in the early time of Obama, when the policies were getting put into place that have played out since. There are people like George Soros, the Rothschild bagman billionaire who is one of the major manipulators of people's revolutions through a network of trusts and organizations that he has, like the Open Society Institute and the International Crisis Group. There's another guy called Zbigniew Brzezinski in the Democons, who was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor and is very, very much a massive insider. That's why when you read Brzezinski's books from 1970 and since, you're looking at the world we're in now, because he knew it was coming. This is the point, however, in the one-party state structure, and that is that the neocons that control the Republican Party and the democons that control the Democratic Party at the next level answer to the same masters, the same network, the same bloodline families and secret society networks. Thus, whether a Republican is in power or a Democrat is in power, Bush or Obama, this network is always in power, no matter what. This is why, and I'm describing the American situation here, but I'm describing what happens in every other country, whether it's Britain or France or anywhere. And what it means is that whoever is in power is controlled by this force, and therefore they advance the agenda of this force, which is the incessant centralization of power in every area of our lives, for a simple reason that the more you centralize power, the more power the few have over the many. And when you concentrate it on a global level, obviously you're giving power over everyone on the planet to this cabal, this network, which is why they want world government, world central bank, world currency, world army. And so how it works is this. You have an election campaign. Now, this is a big thing that I suggest that the occupation groups around the world, fantastic, but we need to understand what's going on if it's going to be most effective. One of the things I would suggest they need to put on their agenda is the end of no contract government, no contract politics. And what I mean by that is this. What happens at the moment is someone will come along and tell you in an election campaign what they think you want to hear to vote for them. Like Obama, I'm closing Guantanamo, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, none of which has happened because it was never intended, and he knew it wasn't going to happen, but he needs to tell you what you want to hear to vote for him. I'm speaking at the moment, just before I'm in Melbourne, Australia, just before I'm leaving Australia after a speaking tour here. And the Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard, as she was coming into office, said that she would definitely not introduce a carbon tax. What's happening now is she's introducing a carbon tax. How can she do that when she came to office saying she wouldn't? How can Obama not close Guantanamo when he said he would? Because there's no contract. And until there's a situation where if someone says, for instance, there will be no carbon tax, there cannot, by law, be a carbon tax until there's been another election at which the person has said, well, actually, if you vote for me, there will be a carbon tax. Because at the moment, this is how it works. And it was done so blatantly by Obama. You tell people what they want to hear, and they vote for you. Then you get into government, and you do exactly the opposite. And this is not just Obama, though he's an extreme example. This is politicians and political parties all over the world. It's happening all the time because there's no contract. And thus, we have this situation where we have an election, people vote for people on the basis of what they're saying, they get into power, nothing changes. So they have another election, and then someone else comes along and tells people what they want to hear. They vote for them, they come into power, they do the opposite. Nothing changes. And so it goes on, time after time after time after time. There must be some kind of contract that connects what people say they're going to do or won't do with what they're allowed to do and or not do when they're in power. because at the moment, because of this situation, this is how it works, to give people the illusion of political choice in almost any country. At any point, you have a party in government, okay? In government, it has the power to introduce this centralization agenda, the police state agenda, and all the other things I've been saying were coming for a very long time. At the same point that party's in power, this party is in opposition. And they oppose the agenda overwhelmingly and criticize the government in power for doing what it's doing. Then we have a farce called an election. And sometimes the governing party becomes the opposition party becomes the government party. Now, the government party that was opposing this agenda of centralization, a police state, and all the rest of it in opposition, when it had no power to do anything anyway, now starts introducing it. And the party that were introducing it in government, now in opposition, they're criticizing it and opposing it. And this is the scam that goes on being played again and again and again, decade after decade after decade, where the common theme is whichever party's in government introduces the agenda. Why? Because oppositions have to oppose to give the illusion of choice. You have no choice in politics. They're masks on the same face. And also, because they want the agenda introduced, any party in government introduces the agenda because, go back again, through the groups that control the individual parties, they answer to the next stage, which is a network that controls both parties. Party politics in general has been a cold, calculated scam to allow the few to control the many. Because when people started to rebel against the overt dictatorship of royal bloodlines and stuff like that, although those bloodlines still exist, but lots of them now wear dark suits and run politics and banking and business and all the rest of it. But there was a chance at that point where there was this rebellion against royal dictatorship, where we might have a political system where people voted for individuals on the basis of their character, on the basis of their genuineness, and on the basis of what they genuinely wanted to do for the benefit of people. Now, this is the cabal's worst bloody nightmare. So what they did was create a party political structure. Isn't it funny when you think about it that there's 7 billion people on the planet, there's all these different countries with all this potential for uniqueness in the way that the countries are run and governed and things are made to happen. And yet, everywhere you go, you have political parties. Is that the only way we can think about structuring politics? No, it's not. But it's the only way, or the best way, to control politics in every country, because it works like this. I talked about the spider's web, the global spider's web, but you can also symbolize this very, very well and accurately as a pyramid, a compartmentalized pyramid, where at the capstone at the top you have a tiny few who dictate to the whole pyramid. And lower down in the pyramid, where more and more people are, the further you come down from that capstone, those people, although there are more and more of them, they know less and less and less about what that organization's about, what its goals are, what its intentions are. The only people that know how that whole pyramid fits together are the few at the top. And these pyramids mean that within them are large numbers of people in ignorance of the real goal and intention of the organization they're involved in, be it a political party or whatever, or a bank, a university, or whatever, the government. And through compartmentalization of knowledge, you're only allowed to know as much as you need to know to make your contribution. It means that people are making contributions to these sinister pyramids that wish to enslave humanity without having any idea that they're doing so, because they don't know how what they're doing in apparent innocence connects with them and them and them and them, all working in apparent innocence. But when you fit it together, it's anything but innocent. Only the few at the top know that. This is how these pyramids operate. And so political parties are pyramids, compartmentalized pyramids. And they're run by very, very few people. That's the idea. That's how you control political parties. So if you say you want to you want to be a member of parliament in Britain, to do that, you have to be chosen by the party to represent them at an election. Because if you stand as an independent, very rarely someone might slip through, but it's very rare. If you're not a part of a political party with that structure, that funding, that access to publicity and promotion, you've really basically got no chance. This is how they've stitched up politics. So to get into the political party, to become a politician, you have to pass the interview. To pass the interview, you have to confirm that you will follow party policy. And that party policy is decided by the very few at the peak of the party pyramid. So you get through that stage, you stand for parliament. You then tell people what you think they want to hear, in line with the centrally dictated campaign themes that you're told to promote and to emphasize. And you get elected, and you become a member of parliament, like a member of Congress or anywhere else around the world. Now, if you are going to progress through that party into the hierarchy that runs it, and if it gets into government, to become part of the government, you have to spend your time voting in Parliament on the basis of what the party hierarchy, the tiny few, are telling you you must vote for or vote against or whatever. Because if you don't, then you are not going to progress in that party. And it's staggering that in what we call democracy, although democracy and freedom are supposed to be interchangeable words, like hell they are, but we have this situation in what's supposed to be a free political system, where we have these whips. And the party whips are there to threaten, cajole, and sometimes bribe members of the party that don't want to vote with the party's diktat in a vote, to do that, to go against their own convictions and what they feel is right, and just go with the party line. And the very fact that whips exists show you that politics is an irrelevance in terms of being people openly voting for and against what they believe in. It's what the party structure believes in that they are voting for and against. Very recently in Britain, we had a vote, while I've been over in Australia, on having a referendum over the European Union. And lots of people in the Conservative Party, the governing party, were, in their hearts, wanting to vote for a referendum. But a lot of them didn't, enough for the government to win the vote, because of the pressure and all the rest of it from the party hierarchy. So thus, the party political system is not, and its very structure from the start has never been about representing the interests of the people. It's about each party representing the interests of the tiny cabal at the top of the party hierarchy, which, let's go back again, then answer ultimately to the same force. This is why when David Cameron came in as Conservative Party Prime Minister of Britain, he's gone against all the stuff that he said he would do, vast amounts of stuff he said he would do when he was campaigning for office. And he's just become a Tony Blair Mark II, as he were always going to be, because like Blair, he represents the same cabal, and thus the same agenda unfolds. So, yeah, what we're seeing is America being systematically destroyed. And people would say then, why would Americans like Obama and the Democratic Party and the Bushes and the Republican Party, why would they systematically destroy America? Because they're not representing America. This is the thing to get over. And it is so important that the Occupy protesters understand this. This is not about representing America. They're representing this cabal that dictates to both parties. And that cabal does not want America to prosper. It wants it to be destroyed for a simple reason. When you are seeking a world government dictatorship, to dictate to every country, you cannot have superpowers that have the financial and military might to say no to you. So what's happening systematically, it's been going on for decades and more, is the American economy has been targeted. And this is why it's in catastrophic disarray. It's because it's systematically been made to be like that. I mean, here's a few questions here. Why would governments that really wanted the best for America allow a situation where enormous numbers of American jobs, particularly in manufacturing, but other areas too, are outsourced to places like China using slave labor? I mean, first of all, at both ends of the situation, you'd say if you were a government worth the name, with a heart, involved at all, we are not going to have, first of all, American jobs taken away in this way because it's harming American people, and we're not going to have them taken away to exploit in sweatshops and slave labor Chinese people and other people in the Far East. But they do it. And the irony is that having done it, having destroyed so much on purpose of the American industrial manufacturing base, America's now cap in hand to China for money to keep going because it can't pay its way. Why? Why would anyone who cares about America bring that situation about? Because they don't. And then you look at what's happened in the financial situation where the privately owned Federal Reserve, Rothschild-controlled privately owned Federal Reserve, through people like Bernanke, have hosed trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars at banks and other financial institutions, not just, my goodness, in America, but around the world. And where is it? It's just like disappeared. Abracadabra. And America's now stuck with this fantastic debt, and the people are stuck with somehow paying it back, which they never will because the American economy will collapse before then, exactly as it's supposed to do. Why would anyone who cares about American people be hosing this money everywhere while people are in tent cities? Because that is systematically further destroying the American economy. And that's the game. Another question. When people are in tent cities, when they're in terrible, terrible financial trouble, they're losing their homes in incredible numbers, why would the American government be spending all added hidden costs in there too, in excess of $1 trillion a year on the military to go and bomb civilians in increasing numbers in other parts of the world? Why would they do that? Answer: the American military is not the American military. It's not serving the interests of America, clearly not, with more than $1 trillion a year going out. It's the cabal's military, which is controlled through the cabal-controlled American government, no matter which party's in power. That's why Bush goes to war abroad, and then in comes Obama, the so-called peace candidate, and he goes to war abroad in exactly the same way, because they're following the same agenda. And what is happening is that the American military, and that in excess of $1 trillion, is being used to advance an agenda in the Middle East and Africa and other parts of the world that the cabal that controls both parties has been following for so long. I mean, if we do not get to that point where we understand that America is a one-party state, Britain is a one-party state, etc., etc. And in fact, when you take the spider's web global construct that I started talking about right at the start of this, we live, in effect, if you get to that level, in a global one-party, one-cabal state. It is absolutely vital that we understand this and realize that politics is not the answer. In its present form, will never be the answer to what is going on. We have to do it. We, the people, have to do it, because politicians are there to do the very opposite of what's good for people. Thanks for listening.